Hey everybody, welcome back to the shift. You know, I really didn't want to not put up a podcast this week. I didn't want to not put up an episode, but I'm finding it hard because, well, some people probably know already, but my mom died today. And I know it's kind of like a weird thing to just decide to sort of share my thoughts with you, but it's a commitment thing, really. Because, I used to do the Eileen Bishop podcast and I didn't keep it up. And I regretted that. And I know that you would understand if I didn't put up, but we just got started. And I thought the least I could do was just share a little bit about why there's not like a normal episode today. Not gonna lie, I haven't even run this by Katie. I mean, she sent me a lovely text today, and poor Katie, she's been through like the emotional ringer since doing this podcast because, well, first of all, only a couple of months ago, she had no idea she was going to be doing a podcast with me. And next thing, it just kind of takes over your life. And then on top of that, I flew her to Dublin to do Vicar Street. And that was like intense, like a lot of flying out of nowhere. And, like suddenly you're on stage in Vicar Street performing to 1,000 people, just recording crazy amount of podcasts. We flew back to New York and it was just like super intense. Now, I couldn't explain to you properly the intensity of what was going on because I just didn't want to talk too much about what was going on with my mother. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is that actually for the last couple of weeks, all this has been swirling around, but I just didn't want to drop it on you guys. Plus, I won't get into the details of what was going on with my mom, but it wasn't actually that clear that she was gonna die today. I know some people don't like the word death, but it is what it is. Or, people say like she passed away and all that. Like, that's fine, she passed and all that, but she died. That's it. But she she's been doing all right the last number of years. She had lung cancer before, and then she recovered from that slowly because she had a lot of complications because of infections, and then she had a bad fall, and then she was recovering from that, and things seemed to be getting better. Then she had another fall. She broke her hip. She broke her neck the first fall. Then she broke her hip the second fall. But then finally we got a bit of like stability, and she had like a good 3 years of stability and independence, and everything seemed to be okay. And then recently she just started getting a bit of pain to the point where about 5 or 6 weeks ago she just couldn't stand. I think about 6 weeks ago she just couldn't stand. The pain was so much, and she has so many problems. Like, I won't even bore you with the different problems that she had. Got to get into the past tense. She had MDS, she had lupus, she had osteoporosis, and she had COPD. But the osteoporosis got so bad that, essentially the lower part of her spine kind of gave up, collapsed maybe you could say. And she was in some bad pain, but she was really trying to fight to get back to some sort of normality. We've had a lot of trips back and we had 3 goes at the hospital. In that, my mother was totally with it, by the way, through all this the last sort of 5 weeks. Just the pain was so much, but obviously there's other things that were happening with this COPD. Just really the pain was, I think, just one thing too many for her body that has been fighting for years to stay above water. And in the end, after a sort of second rehab trip that just didn't work out, within 24 hours she was back in the hospital with like an infection. We took her back to the hospital to fight off that infection one more time. If people follow me on Instagram, that's why I had to fly back from Boston for like a few hours last Saturday. And she was just like, I got to get home, we were totally fine. We set her up at home, but honestly, we really thought we were setting her up at home for like, a good few weeks. Because I'm supposed to be in Galway this weekend, which I'm canceling. I haven't actually had a chance to officially cancel that yet, but I haven't actually given that many other people jobs to do. I'm a little bit of a control freak, but my agency is looking after that. But, I'm supposed to go to Australia on Sunday night, for the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And I was thinking, like, even with my brothers, I was thinking, okay, I'll come back. I came back for a couple of days, but I booked a flight back for tomorrow night to be back for my gigs in Galway. I wasn't coming back to say goodbye. I was coming back to just figure out the lie of the land, just in case she faded away, or just in case she started to go into that, like, not with it phase, because I've done this with my dad. I said, let me be around while she's a bit lucid. And, yesterday afternoon, she seemed okay. But, as the evening went on, the lucidness faded. And that was it in terms of communication. And then, the doctor had been in yesterday to say, could be soon or it could be a month, So suddenly, from yesterday afternoon, I knew it was a bit more real, but I only landed at like 1 o'clock. And then, anyway, this morning was clear that like the game had changed. And we got the doctor back in, the hospice doc. We had a hospice care in the house. And the doctor, it was a different story. But I knew anyway, because, I went through this with my dad. Like, she already had the death rattle going on and everything. I mean, listen, if you haven't been through this, maybe this seems a bit morbid. But if you've been through this, you just kind of know, like, I think it's pretty similar for most people. And I've held so many of my friends like little babies lately. And it's just so joyous, Birth and infants and toddlers. It's like so joyous, man. And death is sad, but it's just the same as that, It's just the same cycle. I know that we hate talking about death, but it's just as much a part of us as the joy of those younger years and the life changes, and it's just so much a part of who we are. And so anyway, I was surprised, but the death rattle was happening like well before I was expecting it. And it's tough because with my dad, it was like real clear, like it's coming for days and weeks really. And we had 1.5 years of doing the show and terminal diagnosis. Dad's got at best 1.5 years. Let's use it. Whereas with this, it was just like literally 24 hours ago that we started to think like this might be it. In fairness to my brother Mike, my brother Mike has been on this from the start, like 5 weeks ago, that this is not good. Like we could be heading to the end. I actually thought, I'm not gonna lie, I really thought he was being dramatic. But myself and my brothers, we fight about a lot of stuff, but I'll tell you, man, one thing we inherited from my mother, when it comes to a crisis, we are unified. This is twice now. We're good at getting it done. And so I got to hand it to my brother Mike, because I don't know I don't even know what I've been back. Because I was in Limerick on Saturday doing the show. And I had my finger on the button to book a flight back for Monday. And then I didn't book it because I was like, like she's been bad before and just like pulled through. And not just pulled through, but just like pulled through for a long time. So I was just like, don't jump the gun, man. Make sure that, you don't want to be, you don't want to be like not needing to be there. Not that I wouldn't want to be back, but like, I just left. I was here last week. But then my brother Mike the next day was like, nah, man, just in case, man, you should come back. So I booked it on Sunday, flew yesterday. So fair play to him. And then my brother Aiden, I mean, some of you guys know Aiden, he's a comedian in Dublin too, but he came back last week because we were getting my mom out of the hospital and we were setting up the house for care. Because, she really wasn't able to walk, so we knew she was going to be bedbound with the pain. I mean, she could actually stand up, but she was losing that ability, not from the pain, but actually from the muscles. But now, of course, I realized, like, she was dying. She was been dying for weeks, but that wasn't actually that obvious to me. So, anyway, it was weird because it was just so much clearer with my dad that it was coming. And then there was a lot of people around. And then suddenly I got this, like, I just was looking at my mother and I was like, I told my brother, I was like, Mike, we gotta get people out of the room. And we gotta, like, let's just be with her for a while because I just in case it's close. And then, the strangest thing, like, I was on the other side. My mother was like slightly sort of, because we have help. The hospice aide was turning my mother every 2 hours, so that she wouldn't get bed sores. And my brother was like, oh, her eyes are open a bit more. Because I had been trying to, she was talking yesterday. I was like, I even held off on a bit of morphine this morning, hoping to get like, just like another couple of words, And she wasn't even, she wasn't home. Like, she was alive, but she wasn't home. And then my brother was like, oh, Des, her eyes are open. And I walked around and I saw the eyes and I was like, oh, hey, Ma. And I won't give you too much details because we don't know each other. And this is pretty fresh, but, with the eyes open, I just thought, all right, let her know, like, we're here. And then my brother Aiden was in the other room, so I was like, Aiden, you know what? Just come in, man, because Mom's eyes are open at the moment. And, like, let's just let her know we're here, And, like, man, like, Aiden was there, and then lo and behold, it was like, this is it. And then, I mean, I won't get too into it, just because, like, I guess there's boundaries, right, in this situation, but we were there, and it happens, and anyone who's been in that situation knows, like, it's pretty, it's pretty amazing, With my dad, it was a little more obvious when he actually went, so we had a little bit of a debate this time. But in the end, it was clear. My dad had a few more sort of like obvious last gasps. And also his death rattle phase and all that stuff was a lot longer. This was quick, which is good, But it's a little bit tougher because it's a little more shocking. And also, my mother has a big family here in Queens. And, my dad had a sister. She lived far away in Australia. And all his people are in Ireland, or mostly in Ireland, My mom's people are mostly here. And they've been around, and they're great, but that's tough, It's a lot of people. A lot of personalities. And I felt bad because not all of them had been by. And some of them were here this morning and some of them were here yesterday, but none of them thought that this was the time, But you just can't know. You know? You just can't know. And that's it. You know? All the stuff starts, and I mean, most of these people that listen to this podcast are in Ireland, so it doesn't really matter, but we got the Hospice of New York. I mean, these people were amazing. Dr. Schwartz came in. What a great guy. Real practical stuff, man. You know, the practicalities are so important because you can forget. You get wrapped up in the care. You can forget. And he reminded me, like, you know, you don't have to wait for your mom to die to call the funeral home. I called the funeral home today to do pre-arrangements. I swear to God, I thought I was telling them about something that we were going to be calling them about. And at the least, I should say, a few days. I called them back 2 hours later. Unbelievable. And, you know, you got to get an official pronouncement of death. You got to get the time of death. Then, you know, they have to do a death certificate. Then the death certificate goes to the funeral home. And the funeral home provides you with as many death certificates as you want for stuff that now has to happen. Because, you know, the truth is that when my dad died, everything just went to my mom. And there's my mom did a lot of that paperwork. But now she's gone, and we got to do it, and I'm cool with that. But it's different. And hey, I'm not gonna lie. My dad was a great guy. Some people here listening, we did a lot of stuff at the end with my dad. He was a performer. He loved the performance of the whole thing. You know, he loved the thinking about the end and thinking about where he wanted his ashes spread, and he loved the show that we did, and he loved the documentary, and he loved the fact that they wrote articles about him at the end. He loved all that. And he was a great dad. But honestly, he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Whereas today, this was the actress in a lead role. My mom was the boss. And I'm not saying that was always good. She was tough, man. She was a tough lady. Cold sometimes, but she got it done in the Eileen Bishop way. And so the boss isn't around to deal with it. And that's tough in its own right, you know? But I think she'd be pretty happy with the job that we were doing. I mean, she was pretty good at, you know, letting us look after things over the last couple of years. You know, she had let go a lot of that control and all that stuff. And it is a good feeling to have been around. I don't mean there today, because that's luck sometimes. But myself and my two brothers, like, since my mom had lung cancer, you know, end of 2014, like, I was still in China when my mother got lung cancer. I just had to fly back from China, just, you know, and then, I mean, I was in Letterkenny. I remember 2015, I was back in Ireland touring, and I was in Letterkenny on a Saturday night. I had this like insane run. I came back from China. I immediately started doing shows in Ireland. I had like a crazy weekend of shows, and on the Saturday night I was in Letterkenny, and then finally I was driving back to Dublin that night, and I just was getting to bed, and I was like, finally I can get a rest. And I fell asleep at like 3 a.m. and I'm a terrible sleeper in the morning. I woke up at 7 a.m. My brother Aiden called me. And he was like, Mom fell down the stairs and broke her neck. And at 10:30, I was flying to New York. And that was 2015. But the point is that, it's been a tough road with the caretaking, but we were there, all of us. My brother Mike lives here. He did his bit. I mean, God, especially this time. My brother Aiden, in that period of time with the cancer surgery and then the broken neck and then eventually a broken hip, while I was in Boston at the Wilbur Theater doing Made in China. My mom was a bad patient, all right? I'm not going to lie. I'll tell you a funny story about that. My mother was not good at recovering slow. I constantly used to say to her, Mom, the shortest way around is the longest way home. Just take it slow and let's get this right. And then we never have to get back to a hospital. But she couldn't stop with the cleaning and the ironing and the clothes. And, she was not very balanced back in those days. And a couple of times I had fights with her. I was like, Mom, you gotta stop with the stairs all the time and just doing stuff all the time. Just slow down just a touch. It's like, we're going to get back to full belt, but you can't get there too quick. And I was in Boston at the Wilbur, and then I did a gig in Portland, Maine that weekend. I can look up the dates. I'm just too lazy to look them up now, just to give it a sense of time. But I think it was the autumn of 2015, because it was November, because I remember the frost had just fallen, and I went to an orchard on the way back down. Because I knew that my mother was in the hospital already. I stopped in an orchard and to pick up some apples to bring back. And the frost had already fallen, because the people at the orchard said, we still have some good apples, but some of them have been a little bit affected by the frost. Anyway, the night before I headed back, I was in Maine, and my brother called me and he said, did you know that Mom fell? And actually, no, it just so happened that with everything that was going on, I didn't find out, I think, for like 12 hours. So I called her. And I said, Ma, everything all right? She was like, no. So what happened? She said, I had a fall and I broke my hip. And I said, well, why didn't you call me? She said, because I didn't want to talk to you. And I said, why? And she said, because you were right. That's my mom. She was stubborn. But, it really was only to her detriment later on in life. It served her well throughout her life. And really, even though it was tough at that time, where she could have maybe taken it a little easier and saved herself a couple of bad falls, it served her well after that too, because actually she fought back pretty well. Sold the house, and we got this place here that I'm in right now. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, another part of Queens near where we grew up. And she had a nice independent life for quite a while, until literally 6 or 7 weeks ago. I mean, she was still driving. Not great. I mean, we didn't want her driving, but that wasn't going to stop her, She wasn't giving up that car. But she was doing her own little bits of shopping until 6 or 7 weeks ago. And this back pain for the last few weeks was pretty horrific, but really not that long. She had a pretty good go of it, to be honest. So anyway, I kind of got into a bit of a long story about what's been going on since the end of 2014, but it hasn't all been that bad. I've been living back here, so actually I've been around a lot more. And I was around a lot at that time, like after the cancer surgery and the falls. I've been around for like most of that. And it's part of the reason why I've been back here. And so, I don't really have that much else to say. I mean, I could talk about this for quite a while. I'm enjoying talking to nobody. I know I'm talking to you. And when I say you, I mean individually each you. In your headphones, in your car. It's you. I know you think that's a plural, but it's you. Just to know what it's like at this time, this moment, the night of 3:41 p.m. That's when she died. It's actually I don't even have a watch in here, but it's about 11 p.m. New York time. So not that long ago, really. And it's now. And I think that's kind of like something cool about that in terms of podcasting, Fuck it. We'll just share this moment, But when I say I'm talking to you, I'm saying that we're all going through this in some way. I mean, I've been lucky. I've been there with both my parents at the end. And I knew a little bit earlier with my dad, but in the end we knew with my mom. We were there. So I've been lucky. And not everyone that's listening will have been or will be lucky like that. But all of us, or most of us, are going to lose our parents. And you got to be ready. And I know this is kind of like boring, but if your parents are older and they haven't done the chats about what's going to happen afterwards, make sure you do it. It's not morbid. It's really practical. Thank God everything was sorted. I mean, I made some calls yesterday, but they were all like, nah, your mother did it. Everything's done. You gotta be ready. You never know. So just do it. Do the research, get a lawyer, do what you gotta do. It just makes this evening that I'm going through right now so much easier. You have no idea. The relief. Because I didn't have my own shit sorted out in that I came back here with a flight booked for tomorrow night thinking I was going back to do my shows in Galway. I had to change flights tonight. It's fucking torturous. I changed my Delta flight. They waived the fee. They were trying to charge me a change fee, which was fine, but it was a lot. Now, I'm going to be honest. I flew business here. And I had a business return. And then when I was changing the flight, I wanted to get the return back business. But on the night I wanted to fly, there was no business seats left. And I could have went into economy, but I just kind of didn't want to because I had already paid for the business. Now, obviously, they were going to refund me with a voucher if I went back into economy for the flight back. But I just figured, everything that's going to happen this week, I've paid for the business. I just want the fucking business, man. God forgive me. I know I sound like a spoiled brat, but I just wanted the business, And I didn't want to take a selfie on the fucking plane, just in case. A couple of days after my mom died, I don't think it's that much to ask. And Delta, they changed me to, I got a flight. And there was a change fee. They were going to charge me. I explained the scenario. Guy got on hold 1 minute later. It's all good, man. We understand, and we're not going to charge you. KLM, on the other hand, for my flights to Australia, which was meant to be Sunday night, which I have now delayed until Tuesday night, or Tuesday, they didn't waive the fee, and it was a lot. It was 1,400 euros. And, that's a lot. And I asked twice. and they didn't waive it. And I got to be honest, I went pretty hard on social media on KLM about an hour ago. And I don't regret it, because I just think, and I paid a lot for the flights to Australia already. It's not like I'm cheap, and it's not like I'm looking for favors. But I just think it's a lot to charge somebody. I'd rather my mother be alive, and I'm not changing the flights. But at the same time, I understand, and I'm in a privileged position where I'm flying business, and really, I had the option, just to defend them a little bit, I had the option to cancel my flight for a full refund voucher. But it would have just left me with, trying to find other flights, and it was just easier this way. So I just did it. And I'll pay the money, and that's life. I might even ask my brothers if we can chuck down some end-of-life expenses that we've incurred and take it out of the estate, but whatever. That's probably a little private. So that's the type of stuff you have to deal with at the end. But anyway, I don't know what else to say. I'll just give you a quick synopsis of my mother's life. She was born in 1940, Lenox Hill Hospital, Manhattan. Her parents, Margaret O'Connor, née O'Hare, was from Glengariff. At the tunnel house, at the border of Cork and Kerry, right literally on the border. The house was at the tunnel. If you've ever been on that road that goes from Glengariff to Kenmare. Her father was from Bannan. Her father was actually a Kerryman. And this is my grandmother's father, was from Bannan on the Kerry side. And my grandmother's mother was O'Sullivan from Glengariff. And they had a shop and a sort of a boarding house for people that were on the road, on the tunnel. And my mother's father was John O'Hare from Kilcoo, County Down. And they met in America. And they got married. John O'Hare was a farmer from the mountains of Mourne. I think that the other side of the family, they were a little more middle class, not really so rural, even though the O'Connor's house at the tunnel was very rural. They were more like the merchant class. I think there was a bit of nose up at my old grandfather. Big beast of a farmer from County Down. And anyway, they got married, and my grandfather worked like a man of those times in the Great Depression. Worked on the Midtown Tunnel from Queens to Manhattan. And they had my mother. My mother was there first. And they moved to Queens when my mother wasn't that old. I guess 5 or 6 or something. My mother had 2 brothers, 2 sisters. Mary Carol Palazola O'Hare was there, obviously. Her brother John O'Hare. Her brother Kevin, who died when he was 49 of lung cancer. He's a New York City fireman. He had an incredible funeral. The fire department marched him all up Northern Boulevard to St. Andrew's Avellino Church. Great guy. And her younger sister, Peggy. Anyway, they grew up classic Irish-American Catholic family in Flushing, Queens. But, both her parents were bad alcoholics. Bad. And I think that the stress of that never left her. I'm not going to lie. She had a tough childhood. Tough. A lot of stress. But they got through that, all those kids. And they all, survived it, and did what they had to do, figured out their own coping mechanisms. And my mother worked for O'Dwyer and Bernstein, New York City law firm, and she met my dad at a party in Manhattan, and it's a funny story actually, because they met, and then my dad stood her up for the second date. But the reason why he stood her up for this second date was because, he'd had all these spinal fusions. He broke his back on a trampoline. And, he was a gymnast and everything. Broke his back on a trampoline, and he had to find a new career. That's how he got into modeling. But he had to go in for another spinal fusion. There was no cell phones back then. And a couple of days later, my mother met his friend at a bar, and she was like cursing him out, being like, "You tell that asshole that he stood me up." She's from Queens. She's like, "You tell him he stood me up. Who does he think he is?" And he explained it to her. And then she went to visit him in the hospital. And of course, if my mother could look after him, by God, I mean, that's where she was in her element. She was good at looking after people, my mom. So that's how they met. And they got married, and, well, they had us. And we fucked everything up. Like kids always do. Fucking ruined the party, man. And they were good parents in their own way, in that old school way. Particularly my mom. She was tough. But she did what she had to do. And we've had our moments, and we've shared it all out. But she was good, man. She started the Moms Club in St. Kevin's. I have like the vaguest of early memories of being in that Moms Club. She started it, and I believe it still goes today. And she started a homeless shelter in St. Kevin's too, which actually was not popular in our neighborhood. A lot of people protested, so much so that NBC News came to St. Kevin's Parish in the 80s. My mother organized to run a winter shelter for homeless people in Manhattan that would be bussed out to different churches around Queens, and my mother volunteered to organize the St. Kevin's one. And locals protested, and my mother went on the news, and she fought for it, and they got it. And she ran that shelter for years. And it's funny because one of the big protesters became my mother's right-hand man. I'm not going to name him. But he realized that he was wrong, and he helped my mom every year with that shelter. It was pretty amazing. We used to go there a lot. I used to hang out with these homeless guys. Mostly black guys coming in from the city, smoking their cigarettes at a time where you would do that. And we sat there and talked to these guys. That was a big experience. First of all, to realize that they're just normal human beings like everybody else, sitting around having a laugh. And secondly, that you can do that. You can help people. That's what your mother wanted to do. And, it's a big highlight of my mom's life. But, we always marched in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. In those years, we marched with County Down. And one year, we're marching down the avenue. And suddenly, we hear all these cheers, like, "Eileen, Eileen, Eileen." And I didn't know what was going on for a sec. And then suddenly you could see, over on the left-hand side, the west side of Fifth Avenue, all the guys from the homeless shelter were waiting for my mom. She ran over and they all hugged her. And, that's the thing about my mother, that those hugs from those people that she helped, oh man, meant so much to her. And she didn't do it for the praise. She did it for the love. She loved these guys. It used to kill her watching people suffering on the streets. And, I saw them in the shelter like a couple of weeks later, and they said, we got there first thing in the morning so we could get that front section. And County Down marched real late. I don't know if people know the New York St. Patrick's Day Parade, but we were real late that year. And they waited there all day. And they said, we ain't leaving this section till we see Eileen. I don't know what accent that was, but it's a voice that I remember in my head of this one guy. And he was like, we said, we ain't leaving till we see Eileen. It was great. That's who she was. And then in the end, my dad died. She had breast cancer too, by the way, Breast cancer survivor, lung cancer survivor, lupus survivor, MDS survivor, COPD. She survived all of them for a long time. I can't even tell you what took her out in the end. Multiple choice. In the end, you just can't fight it all. And I'm sure I could share other things, but I think I'm getting a little tired. In the end, my dad died. She denied it till the end that he was going to go. She regretted that, actually. That was a tough time. Because she just, she just wasn't really equipped for a life without my dad for a while. It's tough on the spouse. Where it's easier for us to let go of our parents. The spouse is tough, Do it all together for so long. She struggles. And I struggled with her after that. I'm not going to lie, because eventually there comes a time where I don't know how to describe what happened after that, but she really got her life together in a way that's very commendable. She found a whole new group of friends and got involved in helping people in another way, which is a little more private, but she really had a whole other life at the end after my dad died, and a way better relationship with all of us. She was calmer, and she admitted that about how anxiety ran her life for so long. She realized that so much of her worry and the control was just unnecessary. And it was great that she had that. It was great. She had a pretty good go of it after my dad died, despite the sadness. And I can tell you right now that she went without anything left to be said with us. She was funny too. She did all my radio ads for my tours over the years. She won an award for one of them. She got an Irish radio ad award. And she was on the Sean Moncrief show one time. She was great. Actually, I'm going to ask Sean Moncrief to find that. Play it, why not? She was great, man. She was funny, man. I can't even begin to tell you all the funny shit she used to do. So I'll finish this with a story about the last thing she ever said. Because my dad was real into the theatrics with the ashes. Actually, I'm going to tell you two stories. First, I'm going to tell you the story of my dad's ashes. This is the final story, okay, guys? I hope you're okay with this. And I'm trying not to be too I'm trying to keep it light. So, my dad, which if you saw the documentary made about my dad was Neil James Bond. My dad wanted his ashes spread in a particular place in Ballycotton. in East Cork. Because my dad's childhood was in Middleton, but he had very happy memories of being in Ballycotton with his grandfather, who, my dad was over there without his parents. His parents were in the UK. So, my dad said this very specific place that he wanted his ashes spread. He said it on the documentary, and, I always think I always thought he had a little bit of a fantasy connection to Ireland sometimes, like he exaggerated his connection to Ireland. And, he was a good exaggerator. So when he was explaining this place in Ballycotton, I always thought that he was like, sort of like a half memory. And when it went out, the documentary, every single person that messaged me, and it was hundreds, all said the exact same spot. He had that spot down to a T. He knew exactly where he wanted it. And he wanted us to spread his ashes there, and while we were spreading them, sing The Old House by John McCormick, which is kind of a beautiful old Irish song, beautiful Irish tenor, John McCormick. And it goes, it's all about the old house and, where the family used to be. And I believe the last line is, "It's time that I leave here. It's time I pass on." It's a very good song for the end, And I think I talked about this once before. Maybe on the Des Bishop podcast. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway, my dad died February 4th, 2011, and the documentary had actually gone out the Thursday before. Like a week and a bit, I guess. And I had been in the Opera House, and then I came home when he died. Anyway, a lot of people knew that my dad died. There was a lot of articles about it and stuff. And so I was in Limerick, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, and doing a show about my dad. My dad was nearly James Bond, even though he'd already died. And I stayed in Adair that time. Adair is way fancier now. It was pretty fancy back then too, but not as fancy as it is now. I stayed in Adair Manor with my 2 buddies, Kyle and Bob, great friends. And we got back to the manor. I was tired, and I had to call my girlfriend at the time, Jenny Lee, who's actually about to have a baby herself, and she was with us when my dad died. And we're not together. It's not my baby. And they went down to the Tack Bar in Adair Manor, which was the residence bar, to have a drink. And I said, "Listen, I'm going to go back to the room, call Jenny Lee, and then I'll come down to you guys." And weirdly enough, I actually, when I hung up the phone, I kind of fell asleep for like 5 minutes on the couch, which wasn't my plan, but I was exhausted. And then I woke up. I think the lads rang me, actually. And I came down. And when I walked into the Tack Bar, there's a piano player there. He was playing The Old House. And I have to tell you that my dad did not say on the documentary that I want you to sing The Old House. All he said was he wanted his ashes spread in Ballycotton. So I walk into the Tack Bar, and this piano player is playing The Old House by John McCormick. I recognized it straight away because I had been listening to it, because I had to go through it with my dad. We hadn't spread the ashes yet. And I sat down, and I think I was telling the guys, I said, "It's funny, this song is the song that my father wants us to sing when we spread his ashes." And when the piano player finished, he looked over at me and he said, "That's for your father." And I mean, I know he saw the documentary, and he saw me, and he dedicated this song to my father, but he started playing it before I walked in. You know, it's so strange. I'm not a big, I know it's kind of spooky or whatever, but I don't care if it was a coincidence or I don't care if that was my dad. Because I'm not inclined to think much about it. I just think it's cool that it happened. And whether it was luck or whatever, who cares? It's fucking cool. My dad would have loved that. In the basement of a Dare Manor, that somehow I got a little sign, whether it was luck or not. But that was my dad, you know. Real dramatic. And, you know, not that you need to know, but we didn't sing The Old House when we spread his ashes in Ballycotton. But I played it on YouTube. And it was playing as we spread them. Kind of thought it was nicer. I didn't want any of us to be thinking that we can't sing for shit while we were spreading my dad's ashes. So I just played the YouTube clip, same YouTube clip my dad showed me when he told me the song that he wanted us to sing. So anyway, my mom's not like that. My mom wanted to be cremated, same as my dad. She wants a closed casket at her wake. She must have told me 100 times, Desmond, my casket has to be closed. I do not want people looking at me at the end. Please promise me you'll do a closed casket, Desmond. I mean, you don't know how many times. But yesterday, she was lucid for a while. My two aunts were there. And we were just joking around. I walked in and I was like, Jesus, Mom, another flight. How many flights am I going to have to take for you? Kidding, you know? Doing a few jokes and things. I was not going to lie. That's how we communicated. And then, you know, I kind of was like, even though other people were in the room, I had a couple of questions I needed to ask her, just like practical stuff, admin. And just remember that we didn't think this was the last thing. I had some admin. I asked her a couple of things. And then, actually, my aunts left. Maybe they thought, like, that we needed to do some chatting. And, you know, I got a good hold of my mom's hand that time, you know. And, I mean, she wasn't really much for chatting then by that stage, but, you know, she knew. She definitely knew I was there. You know, she knew we were there. And I said, Mom, I know that you want a closed casket, and I know that you want to be cremated, but we never actually discussed where you want us to spread your ashes. And she didn't respond straight away, so I thought, you know, just like trying to, you know, because she's obviously on some pain medication, so she would fade in and out, which I thought was the pain medication, but now I realize she was fading all day into the stages of death. So I asked her again, really loudly, in that ignorant way that you do when people are dying and you're desperate to get a few more words out of them. I said, Ma, where do you want us to spread your ashes? And she said, I don't give a fuck where you spread my ashes. And that's the last thing she ever said. And that is a very Eileen Bishop final sentence. And I am very happy with it. So thanks for listening, guys. You're great. This has been an episode of The Shift, a sex and dating podcast. But, you know, really it's just about life. And death is part of that. So thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. Katie is at Katie Boyle Comic. We'll be back to our normally scheduled programming next week. It'll be Sarah Eckel talking about dating and jealousy and dating when you're a little bit older. And I had to cancel Galway. Sorry, guys. Got too much stuff to do over here. My mom's wake is on Thursday afternoon and evening. Frederick's Funeral Home, Flushing, Queens. Her funeral will be on Friday in St. Kevin's, but we don't have a time yet. St. Kevin's. It's the church of my youth. I was an altar boy there and a lector. I read. I was baptized in St. Andrews. But anyway, whatever. And then I'm going to the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. And I think I might have to cancel the first night. But I'll get back to you on that. But don't despair. I'm coming. Because my mother would absolutely hate me canceling a lot of shows. And the show must go on. And it killed her. The money I was spending on flights. Shows that I was missing. In fact, she said to my brother Aiden said, Des is coming back today, Mom. And she said, oh, that's good. But he has to go back for his Galway shows. She was really always worried about everything. But that's endearing. So, I'll be in Melbourne. And then I'll be in Sydney. And then I'll be in Las Vegas. And I'll be in Long Island. And Washington, D.C. this summer. And I'll go anywhere where people will listen. And Katie will be all over New York. And that's it. Tell everybody about this podcast. The night of. And my mom would love that you guys are listening to this. And I hope Sean Moncrief puts up that episode. Thanks.